Hello and welcome to this episode of Wealthfare Book Club. And today we'll be determining the scope of economics by reviewing Henry Hazlitt's Economics Primer, Economics in One Lesson. Now, Mr. Hazlitt wrote this book way back in 1946, where he was working as a journalist for various publications such as the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and the Sun. Specializing in economics and finance, he decided to put together a book to lay some common economic misapprehensions under a microscope for any novice to understand. Now, generally speaking, economics is a complex social science, and in a world filled with squiggly numbers and complex graphs, Mr. Hazlitt paints a colorful yet concise picture of learning the consequences of our economic assumptions. In Economics in One Lesson, Hazlitt starts off by explaining the difference between a good economist and a bad one, stating that a good economist is perceptive about the long-term consequences of their actions, whereas a bad economist revels in the immediate short-term effects. He also believes that most world governments set their economic frameworks based on economic misunderstandings that are portrayed to be true. And he believes what sets it apart from other sciences is the fact that people have selfish interests. And these interests often obstruct robust economic policies. In a bid to destroy the myths propagated by the common man, politicians, and yes, even economists, Mr. Hazlitt is actively pushing for the idea that government spending is not the universal cure to economic ills that ail countries. While Mr. Hazlitt works to show why exports are important, how taxes impact production, how minimum wage correlates to employment, and why a country printing more money isn't as great as it seems. He also provides a stance wherein governments pick and choose for individual sectors of an economy, wherein the governments provide benefits to one sector but end up taxing a comparatively more productive sector of an economy, and then funneling those funds to a more vulnerable sector. Another idea that he brings up is the issue of progressive taxation or marginal tax rate, an idea that's been getting more and more popular these days. But when the rich are taxed at higher rates in an economy, the rates at which they save, reinvest, or even donate proportionally decreases. What this ends up doing is compromising the productive capacity of an economy. One of the themes in the book is the idea of a broken window fallacy, wherein if someone were to break a window, they would most likely spend that money to replace that window, giving the money to the window repairer or maker, and it would seem to stimulate the economy. However, the person spending the money would lose out on that amount of money, the same money that could have been used to, for example, buy a suit, and so the tailor loses out on that money. So the window repairer's gain is the tailor's loss, and the economic growth is seemingly negated. Another fallacy that has been brought up in the book is the blessings of destruction, an idea that destruction would enhance the economy because need would grow. But the issue is, as Mr. Hazlitt points out, that need does not mean demand. Because for demand to happen, there not only needs to be need, but also corresponding purchasing power. The curse of machinery is also something that has been brought up in the book, because the idea exists that automation hurts human labor and thus hurts the economy. Mr. Hazlitt tries to propagate the idea that this is not so. Let's say that people are fired from jobs that machines can do, but the people who own those machines will in turn hire more people to produce those machines and assemble their spare parts. And that would seem to stimulate the economy. Here is where you have a slight issue, because it would still seem that those laid off from their jobs are not being compensated or do not have an alternative that negates their being made redundant. So it still ends up a zero-sum game for them, while a whole other set of workers face benefits. There are many economic policies that tend to be seen as generous or noble, but they're not based on economic reasons. Mr. Hazlitt coins these as emotional economics, which cannot be justified by a calm explanation, but he tries to nonetheless. And when these economic blueprints, irrespective of how noble they may seem, don't end up panning out, they create a nasty Pandora's box of newer and newer misfortunes. The idea has been presented that when actions have immediate effects of positive reaction, it's permanent. However, the argument is advanced in this book, stating that it wouldn't correspond to the idea that they will be eternal. In fact, they may even be negative. There are far more economic fallacies in this book that are wickedly illuminating, but we leave that as a treat for your own eyes. That being said, economics in one lesson, in our opinion, has drawbacks. There are many worrying economic crises like inflation, recession, or even depression, but Mr. Hazlitt doesn't really provide economic policy measures to tackle those. However, he cleverly shines a light on what a free market can do. Relevant even today, the author's most famous book is a must-read for anyone wishing to understand some of the common confusions of an economic nature. And here's one lesson that's unforgettable. The goal, according to him, is to see economic problems as a whole and not in fragments, and then, of course, that is the goal of economic science. And even if you think economics has little to do with your life, you're in for a surprise.